We do. Waiting on Mr. Tim Shriver. I think I can't wait.
That's a big catch.
Oh my gosh! I think we have him.
I think I see him. Mr. Shriver, can you hear us? Nope, can't hear him yet.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yes.
Got you now.
Okay,
Thank you.
Great. Nice.
Tim Shriver.
I've been listening to the commentary on the greatest of all time question. I'm not going to enter that conversation.
Well, you brought it up. You got to jump in. You got to jump in the pool now.
I'm not coming in on that.
You're not.
I mean, I'm going to say Larry Bird. I'm a Celtics fan.
Well, he was great too.
He was great. Michael's pretty doggone.
You need to hear it. Okay. Dean Stevens, Tim, Debbie Antonelli. What a pleasure it is for you to join us. Tim Shriver, the chairman of Special Olympics International. I mean, this is a great get in terms of interviews, man. This is awesome.
This is the easiest guy you booked for this whole event. I'm thrilled to be included.
Well, this is the second year of our fundraiser, 24 Hours of Nothing But Net. Last year we raised $85,000, and this year we're over 93, with our goal being 100. So we're creeping up on it.
Wow, congratulations, fantastic. This shows how creative and innovative and how generous. I mean, imagine in the midst of this extraordinary economic problem that people are more generous than they were last year. I just think that's a great testament, Debbie, to you, what you're doing and what's going on at Special Olympics, what's going on in South Carolina, the whole thing. So congratulations.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because I did have a couple of sleepless nights trying to figure out if this is the right thing at the right time. And I kept coming back to the same thing, and that is special education is always the least funded and the first cut. And when we come back to our new normal, as a parent, I know that we need these funds for programming for Special Olympics. And, Barry Coates and his staff do such a great job in our state. And, I can do this in my driveway literally by myself. And I think that's what's so unique and different about it. And it's been really fun, and we've had really great support here locally, Tim. He can't hear us? We could hear him.
You could hear. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
I got you now.
Yeah. I tried to go off the headset, but it doesn't work. Anyway, no, look, I think Barry's doing a fantastic job. I think you're right. I just want to make one point, Debbie, and that's one of the things we've seen in this crisis is just how many problems arise from inequality. The lack of funding for special education, the lack of funding for supported employment, the lack of funding for recreation, physical activity. These things aren't just unjust, they actually end up costing people's lives. And they make it unsafe for the rest of us. When we see what's happening in group homes, so many people losing their lives unnecessarily, it's because there's isolation. It's because there hasn't been enough training for healthcare practitioners. And it's because so many people are isolated every day of their lives, not just during this particular period. So I think this is the right time, not just to be saying we need support, but to be saying when we come out of this, let's make sure we take equality and the universal dignity of every person as the serious and urgent mandate of the new normal. You mentioned the new normal, not the old normal, the new normal. What will be different? What will be different? Wouldn't it be wonderful if one of the things that was different is that every child who entered school was seen as equally gifted, equally important, equally valuable? Wouldn't that be a nice outcome of an otherwise tragic and painful period of time? I think it would be, and that's why I think what you're doing is so important and why people should be donating, because this is a way of saying when we come out of this, we want to be different. And in this way, we want to be better.
That is, Tim, that's my hope in what I've seen and some of the stories that we share on our local newscasts. You're seeing more and more people start to kind of have that servant's heart, seeing that there's so much need. My fear is that some of us will go back to our self-serving ways when this is all done. But again, if we're able to open just a couple of set of eyes today to see Debbie's efforts and what Special Olympics South Carolina and Special Olympics across
Can you
this
tell
country
everybody
in this world what it means, and to get some more people involved, then it's worth it. And I would love for you, if you wouldn't mind spending just a couple of minutes, if people don't know your history and your family's history, I would love for you to share that with people, because it's a tremendous story.
Yeah, well, thanks. My mom was one of 9 children, and most of her male siblings became well known because of political careers. Her brother was very proud to have become the President of the United States, and two brothers as senators, and so they became, the name or the identity of her family, my mom's family. And again, Republican or Democrat's not the point. It's just that was the story. But the sister in the family that no one really knew very much about was my Aunt Rosemary, and she had an intellectual disability. And my mom saw it in part as her mission to try to improve the world for Rosemary. So while the big, spotlights were on the brothers, my mom just worked over 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years to figure out why it was that the world treated her sister so badly, why there was no education, why the doctors could have cared less, why there was no chance for a summer camp, why no one would teach a young child with an intellectual to swim. Why was this? This was her persistent question. Why was this discrimination so persistent, and what could she do about it? So the Special Olympics movement, the first event in 1968, it looked like a sporting event, but I like to think of it as the most audacious social change event, one of the most audacious social change events of the 20th century. Because in that moment, when everybody saw those athletes on the field as sad, tragic, hopeless, most of them had been isolated in prison-like institutions for no reason. In that moment, they chose to call them Olympic. Human greatness. That was, people must have thought they're crazy. Or if they're not crazy, maybe it's just a sweet little way of putting it. These people who are obviously, very, very sad people. Well, we'll give them a little moment to think they're Olympic. No. That wasn't the point. The point was culture, society, politics, you've got it wrong. Human greatness comes from within. Everybody has it within them. So come down on this playing field and watch this 100-meter dash, and you will see Olympic greatness. And so my mom and others took this word Olympic and tried to use it to lead a social revolution. Through the simple tools of sport, through high jumps, swimming races, track and field competitions, soccer games, basket, take a shot, do a burpee. But do a burpee with a buddy who would have been left out. And then you're going to be involved in actually the hardest thing to do in social change, which is to change your mind. Much easier to change a law, but to change your mind, to have a new way of seeing, that's hard. And that's what this Special Olympics movement has been doing now for 52 years. Every single time I find myself at an event, and thank God I'm very lucky, it's very often, I find myself challenged to just open up a little more to this faith-based insight that everybody's equal. And I say faith-based not because of one religion or another, but to have hope, to believe something that might not be obvious to the rest of the world. This is the gift of the Special Olympics movement, to continue to act as a daily, weekly, monthly, routine invitation to change, to get better, to think more deeply, to see more openly. And in those moments, when we run our races and play our games, whether they're in a middle school in South Carolina or an early childhood center in Shanghai, China, or on a piece of dirt in Central Africa, no matter where we're doing it, we're asking the same question: do you see the Olympic greatness in that child, in that young adult, in that person? Can you see? Try to see the Olympic greatness in that person. And in so doing, to mirror to the athlete his or her own greatness, so that he or she no longer harbors that kind of painful, humiliating stare and exclusion that so many experience so frequently in their lives. Anyway, that's a long answer, but I've been in this professionally for 25 years, but I was 4 years old and my mom was running summer camps for kids with special needs. So in some ways, I think I had my first unified sports experience when I was 4. And the good news is I still find it enormously joyful and enormously powerful in seeking a more just world.
I'm sitting here as a parent, and I'm thinking how lucky we are to have your leadership, Tim.
Thank you,
David. I admire your mom so much. She's such a great role model for moms like me, because I can see the fight through you from her, and we can't thank you enough for that. And I think you have a presentation for us, right? We were looking forward to it.
Well, I did, but I wasn't. I don't need to do it. I wasn't sure because I heard 20 minutes and I'm supposed to stand and give a speech. And as you can see, I can speak for a long time. But
Hey.
I thought it would be boring to give a speech for 20 minutes. So I put some slides together, but I don't need to show them. It's kind of up to you.
Well, I would love for you to go through your slides, because I know that those are going to be very educational for all of us. So I'm anxious to see it.
Well, we'll show a few of them anyway. Why don't we start? The first slide here is a video. It was made by your neighbors to the south in Florida, and I think it's just a great reminder of how a great piece of music, when spoken through the hearts and souls and experiences of our Special Olympics athlete, carries an even more powerful message. Let's watch this first video. You can make it full screen. I can't control it from here. But if you can make it full screen and click on play, and hopefully it'll play.
PowerPoint can't play a video.
I'm sorry, Tim. I know we asked you to go through your PowerPoint. My producer is saying that we can't play it off the PowerPoint.
We can only show
Okay.
But we can show
And
the
I can't
pictures.
share my screen, right?
No.
No, okay. So let's go to the next picture. There you go. So this is a story that I'm fond of telling. This is the opening ceremonies of the 1995 Special Olympics World Games in New Haven. And you can see on the Jumbotron to the right that you can't really recognize it, but Clinton at the time came to the games. And he was giving his opening address there, but it was on the Jumbotron. He wasn't down on the field for security reasons, so he was at the top of the stadium. So the athletes who were down on the field couldn't really see him very well, even though he was on the Jumbotron. But in those days, every athlete was given a single-use camera. So down on the field while he's speaking, a lot of the athletes were taking pictures of young people don't even know what a camera is anymore, but they had these little cameras, and we'd go around taking pictures and then take them to the drugstore and get the pictures developed.
I remember those.
You remember, right? It was like old days. But anyway, so one of the photographers, professional photographer down in the field, saw a group of athletes, and they were trying to get a picture of President Clinton, who was way at the top of the stadium. And they all had their cameras up trying to get a shot of him. But the professional photographer noticed that all the cameras had the backwards. The lens was on their nose. So he realized they'd come from a country that had never used cameras, and they were wasting all their film. So he went over to say to them, you might want to turn your camera around, and then you push the button, and you'll get a good picture. And the athlete said, oh, thank you. But he said, if you look through the viewfinder backwards, it works like binoculars, and you can see the president at the top of the stadium perfectly clearly. Now, I love the story because the photographer saw the athletes, and he assumed they had it wrong. Why? He's a good guy, volunteer, helping out. But he saw through a lens that saw the disability, not the ability.
Right.
Yes.
And we do that to each other all the time. We see each other through stereotypical lenses: age, race, gender, sexual orientation, religion. You're a what from here at such and such an age? Bingo, I make a judgment. And so frequently the judgments are wrong. And when they're wrong, repeatedly, throughout history, it causes great damage. And that's what's happened to people with intellectual differences. They have been subjected to misjudgment, to a stereotype that is actually deadly. If you look at the next slide, you'll see the first person to die. Well, you'll see a report from the New York Times about the recent surge in deaths in New York State of people living in group homes. Why? Because they have been, in some ways, misjudged as having to live in a congregate facility, less health care, less support. So what happens? A disease comes along and it ravages them. You see in the next slide, a neighbor to your south, there's Ives Green. He's the first person to die of COVID in the state of Louisiana about 2 months ago. And his family said at 58, he had a lot more living to do. He didn't, I'm sorry to say, he didn't deserve to die. And this disease doesn't know race, color, religion, age.
Right.
But for many of our people, as the saying goes, we may be in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And the boats our folks have been given often leak, and they're small, and they're vulnerable to a wave. And that's what happened to Ives. He was a Special Olympics athlete, a decorated champion, and he lost his life at 58. Beautiful man, still today, I dare say, the victim of us getting each other wrong. So our mission in this movement is to take that expression, that saying, that we've got a lot more living to do. All of our Special Olympics athletes, they have a lot more living to do, and it's our mission to ensure that they get the chance. And every time someone falls to the sidelines or falls into isolation, it breaks our hearts, and we have to work harder. And every time an Ives Green steps onto the playing field and gets his chance to prove that he has greatness within him, it reaffirms our commitment that every single one of our athletes has a lot more living to do. And when they get to do their living, everybody benefits. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see, I think, some of the living we're trying to do now, the same way you guys are. This is the School of Strength. It's launched with our partners at the WWE, and it features our Special Olympics athletes. Maybe you've talked about it already. Doing exercises, staying in shape, staying fit. Some of these lessons are taught by our athletes. A lot more living to do. A lot more strength to get. A lot more power to show. A lot more fitness to find. A lot more change to make. So this is the kind of thing in these innovative moments we got to do, just like you're doing on this show. And if you look at the next slide, I think you'll see this is another video. So I want you to show it at some point maybe, but it's a beautiful video that comes from our colleagues, your partners in Belgium, that have just done this new campaign. And I don't want to spoil it, because maybe your tech team can show it at some point down the road, but if they can pull it off of the PowerPoint I sent, they can show it. It's a beautiful reflection of the Special Olympics movement and its commitment, just alongside your commitment, to make sure that every one of our athletes gets to fulfill their dream. So I'll leave you with a picture from our 50th anniversary. It's not a picture of the Grand. The next slide, it's just a picture of me at the party we held in in Hyannisport. This is a picture. You can't see this Hyannisport, but this is the same field where we're standing there, where Rosemary, my aunt, grew up, where she was included in sailing races, where she was taught to swim, where she and my mother, as sisters, competed together, where my mom learned the importance of dignity. There's Eddie Barbanel and me back on that same field at the 50th anniversary of Special Olympics, celebrating. Eddie is a film star and a Special Olympics athlete and a global spokesperson for our movement and a former member of our international board of directors. And I just wanted to leave you with a picture that I think, at least I hope it shows how when we work and play together, how much happier we can all be. I was just having the time of my life. There's no pity in that picture, I hope. There's no sympathy. It was just two guys, two buddies hanging out, having a good time at a party. And any party that Eddie Barbanel is at is a better party, as far as I'm concerned. And I hope he feels the same way about me. So anyway, that's the end. I share those quick thoughts as a way of inspiring us to realize we still have work to do, and I hope people will contribute generously now, but also to say that we have a lot of joy to give the world. And the minute this thing is over, and even before it's over, this movement will not stop at trying to share the joy that comes from recognizing the equal and God-given beauty of every single human being, one at a time.
Well, Tim, I'm trying to keep my emotions in check because you hit so many chords with me as a mom and as somebody who's, just trying to make our own community better. One fundraiser at a time.
Fundraiser at a time. And $1, I don't like to be a pitch man. I'm not Jerry Lewis, but I hope people listening will, a lot of people don't have a lot of money, but this is a movement that has never been funded by people with a lot of money. It's always been funded by average people, cops, first responders, moms and dads, teachers, teachers who don't have enough money to fund their classrooms, but they end up giving $5, $25, $50 to Special Olympics. Why? Because they see it, they believe it, they understand it, it's intuitive. Honestly speaking, most of the support for this movement comes from average people. So even if you've only got $5 or $10 to give, I hope you'll consider helping Debbie, you with this campaign, helping Special Olympics South Carolina, helping Nothing But Net. Right now, no contribution is too small. To affirm that when we come out of this, we want to be better at seeing the dignity of every child and every adult in our community. And that's what you're doing. And I'm really grateful to you for doing it for all of us.
Well, Tim, we started yesterday at noon with our local police and fire bringing the torch in, and the cauldron has been burning for almost 24 hours in my front yard. And for us to come full circle with you and to hear your message, it just brings me great joy and hope for all the other families and all the other parents out there that are watching. And, it's just really inspiring. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for having me. Not at all. It's an honor.
And I appreciate you too, Dean. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Dean.
You bet.
So long.
So this is what struck me, right?
Yeah.
That was one mom 52 years ago.